What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Utica, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host, Shawn Fitzgerald, founder of LAF Advisors in Long Island. Shawn, how are we doing today, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm glad to have everyone here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and hopefully we get to talk about, payroll and VAs a little bit, because I've been doing a lot of training and stuff with my VA, and I would just love to dive into the nitty-gritty of, payroll and percentages and all that fun stuff. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, you are in the right place, my friend, and I think we've got to mention that the Utica folks here got you backed right into a corner, Mr. Fitzgerald. So we're taking over. We got plenty of Utica, New York DNA on this podcast ready to roll. But today we are very, very excited to welcome Roe and Cayla from Agency CFO, that is by the RD Advisory Group. Cayla and Roe, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. How are you?
We are great. We are thrilled to be with you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Utica, New York in the house.
Absolutely. We represent.
So, Roe, why don't you tell us a little bit about Agency CFO, the story, how you got to where we are today, and then we'll jump into all the fun stuff that Shawn's been waiting to hear about.
Well, if you want me to launch in, I actually founded RD Advisory Group 10 years ago. This will be our 10-year anniversary in September. And I was doing your local typical NBA work, whether it was strategic plans, meeting facilitation, all of that was involved. Actually, Stephen led the local Rotary, which is an incredible networking group for us here. I was able to serve on it for several years and really enjoyed that work. And along the way, we wrote a book called Changing Your Equation. It's actually a personal leadership book. My husband, Don, and I wrote it. And we did some really cool work with the Young Scholars Program, and we did it through Utica College. And the opportunity came up. Don was the CFO for a large local insurance agency, and he was there for 14 years wearing many hats. And the opportunity came up for him to be a virtual CFO as well. So he did that too. And it was so successful that the agency owner he worked for said, why don't you take this, make it your program, and I will be your client. And 5 years in, July 1st is our 5-year agency CFO program. They are still our client. We have clients from coast to coast, and now we have employees from coast to coast. So it has been an incredible journey. I love the Scratch, Stephen, because we have built this from scratch. There's no other program that exists like Agency CFO, and every day we are in the trenches.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
3 years ago. And, I always say ironically, so I was at the agency is done, and Stephen's familiar with our local agency, so I was in business development, really on the sales side, and had just started in my role. And Don said, "Well, we're launching this new fee work. Could you work on a report? Throw some colors in there, add some color to my report." And ironically, I helped build out the first report set for him for Agency CFO at the agency, and then. What would you say, 5 years later now, I'm still developing our report and a big part of making it look legible.
And she shortchanges herself. To have someone like Cayla, she is a young professional. She has her own book of business. She has her own clients that she's CFO for, and she runs our programs for any small groups, smaller agencies. So she's in the trenches with Scratch agencies herself. So you have kind of both of us. I'm the old lady, the old established one, now 10 years in, but built it from scratch. And here you guys have this young professional who's working with other young professionals. So what questions do you have for us? What can we solve for your readers, your listeners?
I got so many questions for you.
Go for it.
I'm going to start with a little bit of a generic one, just in the sense of what numbers and data should newer agents be paying the most attention to? Because I know when it comes to running a business, I was a producer prior to opening my agency, and I didn't really have to worry about any of the business numbers, to be honest. And then when I opened up my business, I was like, holy crap, I got to learn all these numbers and terms and data. So what should newer agents be paying attention to the most, you think?
I know my answer, Kay. Do you want to go first?
So I will tell you, it's the one that matters at the end of the day when, you're building up the value of your book, right? That's why you start this. That's the reason when you have hard days, you remember why you started. It's profitability. And at the end of the day, to me, if you can measure profit and, for the scratch agents, you can't necessarily measure it the three ways. We measure it with contingency, without, and then EBITDA. So I hope one day they get some nice profit sharing dollars and can measure it that way. But if you can always earn a profit and always run the right profit margin, the magic number for best practice is always 20%. And I recently heard this the other day, and I'm going to give credit where it's due. I think Kelly Juilliard, if you know her from Live Oak Bank, she gave this to one of our clients and said that if you are running profitability over 30%, you're not spending enough to grow. And it was something so eye-opening that, it's good for any size agency, is that I hope that they get there one day. But profit to me is like the number one metric you should always keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I was going to say contingencies. What's that?
You will get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there one day. We'll get there.
Absolutely. Sooner than later, Stephen. Sooner than later. And I will say my first piece of advice for any scratch agency, and Shawn, I loved it. You said you were a producer and now your agency is when you come, if you're on one of our agency CFO programs, what we make you do is speak revenue only. We do not allow any talk around premium, because premium, we've heard agencies, I got $1 million premium. Really? You don't have $1 million. That you cannot go spend $1 million of premium. Revenue, so if you, let's say an average of 12% commissions, you have $120,000 of revenue. That's what you can spend. So we absolutely always talk revenue.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because in New York, I mean, there's something called the New York State Insurance Fund, and you could write $100,000 premium account and it pays zero revenue. So that could skew your numbers. But all right, so going back to profitability, this might be a very silly question. How do you measure profitability?
That is, you have to know your numbers. So whether even when I first started RD Advisory Group, and it was only me, we've since changed the ownership structure. Don and I are actual partners in the business. We're talking about equity for the employees. We're growing up that way. I started immediately on QuickBooks. Yes. It is not that hard to learn. It is not that expensive, and it does a decent job. It's not perfect for insurance agencies, but it does a decent job, and it integrates well with like a HawkSoft agency management system. So first thing is you get on QuickBooks and you reach out to Cayla and you say, can I please have that chart of accounts you have? Because she has a listing that we give. We freely give this information because we've compiled it, and we're very close to Reagan Big I Best Practice Guide. That is your second tidbit. You want to download the best practices. There's a cost if you download it, but you can also look at it for free on your screen. It is for any size agency. It's broken up into categories. And what you're going to do is you set up your chart of accounts, you start posting your expenses, you start posting your incoming revenue, and ultimately you're going to be able to figure out your profitability as things go in the different buckets of expenses. Then you benchmark it against what Reagan Best Practices says for profitability, which Cayla mentioned, and based on your size, it's your profitability. It's after you take a reasonable salary. It's after you pay your employees or expenses or rent or whatever. So even if your revenue is $100,000 a year, you're just starting out, it's okay to have $80,000 of expenses and have $20,000 left over That's your profitability. That lets you invest in the future. It gives you that safety net if you need to make payroll. It's the end of the day. By having that profitability, you're going to build value into your agency beyond the sales.
Mm-hmm. And Roe, do you tend to see that the newer agencies, the ones that are open, 5 years and under, do they generally have any profitability? Or when's kind of like that break even point on average? I know everyone's probably.
How about like a year and 2 weeks? If you had an agency, let's say around that point, is it all right if there's no profitability? Yeah, in Utica.
How about if I say this, Stephen? Going back to when I was a local adjunct professor at a community college, the fact that you've lasted over a year, congratulations. You're better than most small businesses who start out.
Perfect. So I tell myself every night before I go to bed, thank you.
Yeah, pat yourself on the back, but it's true. Small businesses rarely last their first year.
Absolutely.
All right, so Cayla, why don't you take that question from Shawn?
I think I'm going to say the timeline to give Stephen something to look forward to is that similar to a producer. Usually by year 3, you're at least starting to see some progress. I'm not going to say positive profits, but you're at least able to see some progress. And I think you then get to start scaling. Right now, you're in total build it mode.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, the leaner your expenses are and the better handle you have on what you're spending and what's coming in and how much new business you write, that's going to determine when you start to turn around and make that profit. So I wouldn't, get my hopes up and say within the first 2 years, but I'm going to say by year 5, if you're not at least on the path to do so, or it's not clear to you, then there is something majorly going wrong. And that's when you should probably talk to us and let's break it down. And it's the reason that we start with benchmarking. It's one of the first things that we do whether they're in a mastery, our larger size package, they could be an agency of 10 million or, someone of, less than $1 million. We're going to start with the Reagan best practice numbers, line up their own GL, their own chart of accounts, and see where their spend is, their P&L, and tell them, hey, you're spending way too much money in advertising. This is why you have no profit, or you're overpaying your people. The more that you can be in line with your own metrics, measure that monthly, and really know and be able to talk about your own profitability, I think you're going to scale a lot faster. So, I will say the velocity of which you scale is completely up to you and how well you know your numbers.
Right.
I was just going to add to that, Kay. That's perfect. It's your tolerance for risk. It's your tolerance. We are all about growth, and oftentimes people expect, as the CFOs, we say, cut your spending, cut your spending. We want your spending to be moderate and in line with your best practices, but we go tell people literally, go sell something. Don't worry, just go sell. Just go sell, and your numbers will take care of yourself. As long as Cayla said, your producer agreements are in alignment. You're not overpaying your producers. You have a good ratio for what you pay your service people. And Shawn, you mentioned, we were chit-chatting before, VAs. What you use and how you build your infrastructure, that ramp up, is your tolerance. So Stephen, you may be in super growth mode and you're doing some really cool things that are going to delay a little profitability, but as long as you're on the path, as long as you're increasing your sales, you're investing in the right areas, it's going to come into focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so let's back up for maybe those listeners that are listening that are thinking of starting an agency, right? You talked about, and because I think that could apply to people that are 1, 2, 3, 4 years in this or whatever. You talked about, you start with QuickBooks, start there. What are some other things that, some small piece of advice that you would say to do on, like Cayla said, know your numbers, look at the monthly picture, whatever it is, some small piece of advice, because like you said, most people either turn from a producer to an owner, they go and get a bank account. Here's where you can put my commissions in, and they're just selling, they're growing, right? And it's like, oh, okay, look at that. That's nice. There's a commission check that came in. And then it's trying to figure those things out as they go. But for those who are listening to this podcast and maybe thinking of taking that jump, what are some things that they can do to better prepare themselves before they do?
Cayla knows the look on my face. Like I am totally in college instructor mode because I taught entrepreneurship.
We also call Roe the shark, so you never know what's going to come out of her mouth either.
If there's blood in the water, forget it. I'm circling. The first thing, Stephen, I would say is you contact your local SBDC or SBDA, whatever it is. It's your small business administration. Usually they're at a local college. Mm-hmm. And they have counselors there who are there to help with business plans, financing, grants. It's no cost to the person who needs the service. And it's like this hidden gem. For a while locally, it was at our state university that's in town, Utica SUNY Poly. It's since moved, I believe, to our local community college, Mohawk Valley Community College. So there are great, great resources for anyone before they dive in. I myself, even when I started RD Advisory Group, met with them. Get that outside perspective on business structure. I will say the other thing I tell anyone who asks me, and I do get people who ask me, you're going to set it up the right way. You're going to spend the money on legal. You're going to get your LLC or your S Corp right from the start.
All right. And that brings me to my next question.
Shawn, you know we're recording this, right? Your right hand's going to hurt over there. I see you just taking so many notes. You can go back, iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, wherever you want to listen to this podcast. You can go back and check it out. I'm just letting you know. Go ahead.
All right. Before hiring your first employee, what are some of the key metrics to look at? Because I've personally heard a bunch of different things. Oh, once you're at $2 million in premium, you should look at this, but everyone's agency is so different, right? So
here's the magic secret. If you read the best practices study, it literally gives you the exact measurement, the exact average salary of the PNC agency, Life and Health. So the way that Reagan really tries to differentiate, they'll do personal lines, commercial, and then obviously Life and Health is going to be much different. So every year they give you, a personal lines can under a 1.25 million, I think, and don't quote me on the exact number, but it's somewhere close to like 22% of the total book should be going to their salary. Or they even say, the average personal lines at the median is making 40 to 50,000. So they genuinely give you even the revenue per person that they should be managing. So like if you have a predominantly commercial book of like 400,000 revenue, we'll say, then you can afford 1.4 people and you can afford to pay them 20% of that book that they're managing. So
okay, so that's
there's your number.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
the roadmap. While she was speaking, I pulled up the calculator. If you have a book of business that's $250,000 in revenue, and you need to hire a service person, you're going to think about paying them on average, let's go with 25% of the book based, some markets, the wages are more expensive, some less. You'd be able to pay them $62,000 on a $250,000 revenue book of business. And a 25%, that's a fair amount for an experienced, and that would be my second piece of advice is if you're a scratch agency and you're at the point of hiring your first service person, not a VA, a true in-house service person, don't go cheap. You need experienced.
Okay, I like that.
And I did get this question today, and I think it definitely makes sense in this conversation because VAs are, that is the new way to build productivity in agencies and really help your service people or anyone. They do count towards your total FTE count. So a lot of times they think they can pay the service person, but then also still have like 4 VAs. But, if they're working full time and you're just getting them at much less of a cost, but they still go into your total FTE structure and they count towards your total revenue per employee.
Okay. And then the total, because I've heard before, like, what percentage of your total agency revenue should go towards payroll. And I'm assuming in that payroll figure should be the owner, right?
Yes.
The owner's salary
Wow.
should be included in that. The
Correct.
VA, and then whatever the service person is, I would assume.
Yes.
So we took, Shawn, to do a visual, and I'm not going to show it today for bandwidth reasons. We can, but we took a visual using the Reagan Big Eye best practice data, which we have permission to use. We have permission from Bobby Reagan himself. We always cite them and quote them. But if you look at the value of an agency dollar, every dollar of revenue that comes into your agency, how does that get split up among the different categories? So we know we want 20-ish% profit. Well, then you've got your benefits, your payroll taxes, your operating expenses, meaning to open your, to have an office space, whatever, your sales expenses, and then you have your salaries, including your producer commissions, your administrative salaries, your sales salaries, your service salaries, and even your own salaries. And typically that's going to be, depending on your size range, and this is a really, really rough number, you're probably looking at 46 to 50% in that range of every dollar. So if we round up and say 50 cents on the dollar is going right to salaries, not benefits, not payroll taxes, just to salaries. And you want 20 cents on the dollar for profit, that's going to leave you 30 cents of every dollar to cover all the other expenses. And when we start to look, even as a scratch agency, when you do your initial planning, when you do your initial, your business plan, the idea behind everything, it's understanding. And Cayla made a great point. Just because they're a VA, they are still a salary. They go in that 50-cent bucket.
Yeah. And I would assume on like a newer agency, 5 years and under, just for the purpose of the people listening, their salary is probably on the lower end of that percentage, I would assume.
They are, especially the owner's salary, because we always work hard to get things off the ground. However, it gets back to what my experience has been 10 years into this, is you get what you pay for. And if I am all for internships. I'm all for helping young professionals grow. But we also need the balance of, if you go dirt cheap on all your salaries, you're going to try to be raising everyone up at the same time. If you can make the numbers work and get someone with some experience, it makes
and
it worth it.
it's such a crucial time to do that, right? Because when you're hiring those first couple people, there's a reason you're hiring them. So, you need to make sure that you can, obviously there's going to be a training phase. There's going to be a learning how your agency works, and all of that is going to come, but it'll be much quicker if you have someone's experienced, or like you said, paying for what you get for. I want to ask this next question that we were just kind of touched on, but I was thinking about it. First off, I think we should dive into more, just in a brief discussion about how everybody's different, because I think Shawn and I have gotten close right when I started the agency. And, when we talked about these things, about how you see in some of these groups, like, hey, I have $1 million in premium. Should I hire someone yet? And it's like, my upstate New York $1 million in premium looks so different than Shawn's Long Island $1 million in premium. Different characteristics, different amount of policies, all those things. So I want to touch on that. And then I'm just curious on you touching on, when should the owner start taking a salary? Is there a formula? I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to do what you got to do. If you're opening the business and you need some money to support your family and you're going through all that, but like, what profitability and different numbers are around with, okay, it's all right to take a little bit out, and I can take a little bit more out when I get to this point. What do those benchmarks look like? So a lot there, but I think they kind of coincide with one another.
I'm going to start at the end. I'll start with the last question and let Kay touch back. Stephen, I know of an agency owner we're close to in North Carolina, and he was a scratch agency who's now many years in and very, very successful. And he, I think, didn't take a salary for the first 7 to 9 years. It's your tolerance for this. It's what can your lifestyle support? What can you afford? We can't have the owners not taking a salary to their detriment.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're absolutely right. Every case is completely different. When Don joined us and we lost his regular salary, we had it planned out that, okay, we're going to be fine. We have enough clients to start this that we can get going. It's a bit different because we were able to get automatic monthly payments than waiting for a carrier download. Yet I think it comes back to risk tolerance, but also what do you need to live?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you in the case of North Carolina, the wife worked in the medical field and could support the agency for 7 years or 9 years or whatever it was. But if she didn't, then Cayla's heard me say this a lot of times. There's the leadership mantra, servant leadership, and I am all about servant leadership. I want to serve my team members. I want to serve my clients. I want to serve my community. The thing about servant leadership is we have to remember, as the business owners, we have to be served. Because if we're not served, no one else. It's that whole adage of when you're on the airplane, you put your mask on first.
I love that saying.
So, Stephen, the idea is as soon as you are able, even if it's $10,000 a year, it's getting into the habit of paying yourself. What I make now isn't what I made 10 years ago. That's not what my salary was. And Don and I are actually on our payroll platform. We get a paycheck. We are very regimented and disciplined. And I guess that's the second part of my answer, is to be disciplined. You can start small. Again, even if you get $10,000 salary this year, you need to reward yourself. You've worked hard. You need to pay yourself. It's beyond reward. It's you need to compensate yourself. It can grow as your agency grows. You can take a commission like a producer. You can do anything you want to structure. We've kind of seen all of that, but it's discipline. It is taking care of yourself, because if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone else.
Or the agency.
Absolutely.
Or the agency, yeah.
I think it goes back to knowing your numbers, right? You have to know the impact of every decision that you make. And that's why I say, you want to scale to profitability and get that profit, because it's going to feel a lot better to take that 10,000 distribution for yourself, that salary, knowing that you're not completely taking away from your own profitability. Because at the end of the day, if you know what it is, you know how much is going to you, and you have to be good with that. The second part of your question was, obviously, we've learned from our CFO, Caitlin, that, $100 in Long Island is a lot different than up here in Utica, New York, and upstate. But I will tell you that outside of, obviously, you do have to pay people differently, that a lot of times the reason that we do love best practices is that no matter what part of the country that you're in, it's still applicable. And while your dollar for people might go a little bit further in certain regions, it does not change the metrics and the actual KPIs, and we call them our money metrics. It's our critical 5 that we're always looking at. It doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, it's still going to be the same metrics and the same numbers that you're looking at. So it really doesn't range too much.
And I want to add to that. That is awesome, Kay. What I want to add to it is right now, you may be able to go, say you need a personal lines account manager, and they may be in a very rural part of the Southeast. The salaries may be very much lower. You can go in, pay them more than what you're paying them. They're getting paid locally, and pay them a little less than what you'd pay regionally here, and you've got a great employee. This is happening across the country. We are hearing stories pretty much every week. Think of a big metropolitan area like San Francisco. The salaries are insane, but yet they're going to, and we know it happened locally, they'll come to the central New York region, pick up a few employees, and pay them way less than they would have to if they are in San Francisco.
Well, we don't have to give Shawn any ideas here.
There is an equalization of salaries coming.
Yeah.
It is starting to happen.
Yeah, we had Ryan Hanley on the
that-
podcast a couple episodes ago, and he was saying
Yeah.
that same thing, how he's getting his best people out of Florida, and it works for him, it works for them,
Absolutely.
and it's the same. It's the power of kind of the world that we're in right now, so it makes complete sense.
Yeah. Use it to your advantage.
Absolutely. And we love Ryan. We've met with him. He's been here. Yeah. This is a great industry of connections. And that's why we get to share these insights and information. And it is absolutely, absolutely happening. And I know we're talking a lot. There's one more point because there's so many great points coming out of this. And this is for Stephen and all of the scratch agencies. Ultimately, if you can get yourself set up to be taxed like an S Corp, and you put yourself on your payroll, it is the greatest thing. I talked about the discipline of it, but it helps. Like, we have a 401k here at our agency, in our program. So Don and I are on our 401k. We're on our health benefits. The more you will treat yourself as one of your employees, the stronger the foundation of your business will be.
Change just a little bit, because this came to mind. When you're working with scratch agencies, or I guess established people, I think it would make sense for both. When they come to you and maybe have one too many shiny objects, I'm curious of your thoughts on that, because I think we talk a lot, especially from a scratch agency standpoint. There are a lot of tools, especially in my first year of business, that I say, man, I wish I got this in the beginning and it would have made sense, because they are solving a problem, right? Maybe that $100, $200 a month didn't make sense month 2, but if I had it month 2, it would have helped me for month 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. But I'm curious, are there specific things, or is it just boil down to the answer of does it solve a problem or not, from your standpoint, that when clients come to you and say, hey, I'm really going to invest in this, how do you guys look at that from your standpoint?
They don't have to be scratch agencies, Stephen. Even our big agencies,
I think you're right.
multi-million-dollar revenues, there's always a shiny object, always. And that's the best part of being an entrepreneur, isn't it? Is that the true entrepreneurs are always chasing the next idea, the next innovation. That's what keeps us going through the grind. In daily business, whether you're our program, an agency, or a mom and pop cafe down the street, it is a grind. So my best advice, the way we approach it, is we do believe in strategic planning. We do believe in understanding the amount of effort, the amount of cost, and what the return is. And what's the opportunity cost? Do I drop everything for this shiny object? You got to be careful, because once you get in that habit. So yeah, you may have missed out on month 2 or 3, but 5 years from now, it's probably not going to matter as much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stupid. I know that they don't just drop the shiny object because we said they can't do it or they shouldn't do it. But I kind of approach it, think of it as online shopping, right? If I clicked on every ad, everything that came up on Amazon and bought it, I would be so poor. So imagine if you actually acted upon every single shiny object that came upon your idea list. It would drag you in every which direction, and you would forget to do the 2 things that matter most: sell new clients and retain your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, those are the 2 magic things. No matter what comes up, it might be cool, but is it effective? And is it going to bring, if it's not going to matter in 5 months from now, why are you even bothering with it? And just like online shopping, make your wish list, right? If you want to spend on something expensive, you've got something else, make your list so that when the chance comes, you might be able to come back to it in 6 months. It might make more sense then. But if it's not going to matter to you in 6 months and it's not going to bring your business further anymore, then what's the point of even bringing it up or even spending 2 more minutes of thought on it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just reading Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David, and he had a cool formula in that book called ITR, and it was: investment is the I, how much will it cost or save us? T is time, how much time will it take or save us? And then R was return, calculate the return on the money and the time involved in the decision.
You
And,
got
that's
it.
kind of like a formula I've used now. Anytime I look at something new and I get super excited, which is most things I see, I kind of apply that formula, and I found it to be super helpful.
Well, and
Love
I
that.
think too, if you're a scratch agent, especially if you're just by yourself starting, find an accountability partner. Because I mean, how many times, Shawn, have you and I been like, "Oh, this is gonna change everything," and it's like, no, shut up and go back to selling policies and whatever.
More
Like,
times than I'd like to say.
because it's so easy, especially when you're scratch and you're a one person, one man band, to just get in your own head of I need this new thing to be able to take me to the next level when it's farthest thing from the truth. And again, it's situational, just like the kind of everything we're talking about. But I mean, I think that's important as well.
The outside mentor, Stephen, you've touched on it in very sharp accountability partners with similar people who are in your same situation.
Mm-hmm.
You may have some industry mentors. One I know is local. We adore James Jenkins. He started from scratch. He's doing great things with his book, with his podcast. We've been on it. We absolutely love James and all he's doing. You definitely follow the path of someone like him. And then you go to other resources. So who's a strong business mentor in your community that you can meet with regularly that may not be in your actual industry? Maybe they are, but it's getting guys, I'm the oldest one in this podcast right now. Tap into my generation. Tap into us.
Oh, for
because
sure.
10 years ago, I was tapping into business leaders locally who were pushing me like, you can do this, go do this. And even when we wrote the book, one of my personal mentors who's in Washington, D.C., different industry, said, you're going to go do this book marketing program. He launched Jack Canfield. He's going to train you. And all of a sudden, Don and I had like 5 or 6 experts. We had an image coach. We had a storytelling coach. We had all of it. That's how you're going to get better. It's not just the voices close to you. It's the voices of others who have succeeded in their own ways.
And they've succeeded in their own ways and have gone through the failing forward and the grind and all of that. And that's why, and at least in my experience, is why they are so open to having the conversation with the younger or newer folks or whatever it might be to maybe alleviate some of that. So that, I mean, you touched on it really quick a while ago, Ro, about just the generosity in this industry. And it's spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will help. And
These are so different. You mentioned, your agency is going to be so different than Shawn's, yet at the same time, I always tell people, you've got to have someone to look up to. You need an agency to look up to. So don't, hold yourself back and say, okay, they're just maybe $1 million ahead of me. Like, think of the person that's 5, 10, 15 million potentially. Get a meeting with that, because at the end of the day, it's great to have connections and it's great to have people around you. Yet you still need an agency. You need someone to look up to, so the path that you're headed, their advice that they're going to give you. It's not going to bring you to a benefits agency when you know that you're strong in commercial and you can't even sell benefits. So,
right.
Just figure out also who you're looking up to, and that's the person you really should talk to is, who's done it already, and
absolutely.
Think bigger than just, having good friends.
And I will say, you're never, as much as I just said, I'm the oldest one here, Don and I still have a quote unquote career coach. We have mentors for our team that it's outside of us. So you have resources like Kelly Donahue Pero and Agency Performance Partners. They are absolutely amazing. There's the Sitkins group. The ones that actually we're a member of is Insight Performance Group. So Larry Linney still mentors Don and I. Maura mentors Cayla and our team. You're never, not only get mentors for you as the business owner, but also your team, because the more you lift your team up, you more invest in them, they're going to help you get to where you want to go, because you're taking them with you. So one of our favorite activities, and this is just one of those little tips that we finally got to the point we can do, is we take our team for a retreat every year. And it's business planning. It's our strategic meeting. It's what can we do different? What can we do better? We spend a lot of time. We don't get to travel as much because we are always working on our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And we will take 1 week a year to work on ourselves with our team.
Yeah, that builds a certain culture. We just had that conversation with Emmanuel on the last episode, Stephen. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, we love culture. We love it.
Yeah.
I think that's why your first two hires are so critical, right? You need someone, if you're the one doing all the heavy lifting, you need someone else that's going to help you keep raising it higher. You don't need someone that, they showed up one day to help raise it and then you're stuck the next day. And part of, I don't know if it's intentional, but, Don and I have always put all of our team members, whether it was just myself, whether now we have a team, they've always put skin in the game for me so that I care. And it's called entrepreneurship. I care just as much. So, they make me a part of the decision-making process. They let me have a voice and input, and I probably would have shared it anyways, even if they didn't ask, but
probably no, you would have.
and
they've given me skin in the game. So I feel like when we win, I also win. And when we lose, I also feel the loss of that. So that next time I work even harder to make sure that, we don't make that mistake again.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. I mean, as we look to wrap this up, I want to touch on, more. I think we could talk forever on all this culture topic and all this is fantastic. But talk to us now. Like, let's just boil it down in basic terms of where do you guys fit in?
All right. So where we fit in, Agency CFO comes in the middle. We don't do any transactional processing. We are not the tactical bookkeeper, nor do we do any CPA. We don't do taxes. But to really get where you're going, if your goal is to be a $1 million revenue agency, a $5 million revenue agency, a $10 million revenue, you're going to need a roadmap. And we put the financial plan. We don't like calling it a budget. It's a budget, but it's the entire financial plan. That's the starting point. But that's not all. What about those compensation plans? What about an 80-20 analysis on where 80% of your revenue is coming? Chances are it really is 20% of your clients. What about that retention analysis or ideal client profile or anything that has a number to it? That's when you need a strategic CFO. And that's where we come in.
It'd probably be good to have one early on.
Yeah. And I'll add at any point, you ask what's the one thing a scratch agency can do before they even start, they even have their first year, build a budget, even if it's a few numbers down on paper or, ask us for one of our tools, something, any size, a budget is going to matter. It's part of getting to that profitability. But it's the reason that we start there and we end every year with it and renew it every year and talk about it every single month. So at the core of our program, that's what we do. We measure it monthly. And, Don's favorite quote is you have to do, I'm going to screw it up, but you have to do the ordinary makes you extraordinary. And it's not fun to look at your results. It's not the shiny object. It's especially when they're bad and you don't feel happy about them or good about it. If you see a lot of red, you still have to look at it monthly and you have to measure it monthly. Because essentially that's what brings you forward every single year is if you have the budget, you can measure against it.
And it's the cadence. It's the cadence of understanding your results. And that's what we tell any prospective client or current client. We keep you on your cadence. So if you're on our full program, it's unlimited. You get a monthly earnings call where we actually talk your earnings as if you were on CNBC and we give you the monthly report and look at everything, contingency management to cash flow. Are you in trust if you have a lot of agency bill? However that works. And then we do a strategic call to work on all of those other financial projects that support everything to keep the agency on track to meet those goals.
Yeah, I really like you said ordinary. Yeah. I didn't really do it. I didn't set a budget. And that would have been a very smart thing to do. And it would also to just so maybe other agents can learn from my mistakes. One of the mistakes I made, and Steven's probably going to crack up on the side, is be cautious of signing long-term contracts. Okay.
Do I have to crack up on the side, or can I crack up now?
No.
Okay.
Now we're going to laugh at your face.
Oh, wait.
Don't sign the 5-year, agency management system contract, or the, 5-year tech contract. That would be one thing I'd be very cautious of. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think the one thing...
Take a CFO to ask, should I do this? What is your experience?
Exactly. But the one thing with having the budget is like, you know where you got to be. It's just, it all just boils in basic terms of just being aware, right? If my expenses are X and I want to be able to pull $50 a month from the agency to put in my pocket, here's where I have to be. And like, you guys are able to boil that down. And like you said, what do you want to be? Do you want to be the $1 million agency? Do you want to be the $5 million agency? And how do you get there? Without any plan, you're a fish in water that can't swim. I mean, boil it down to basic terms,
Yeah. And Stephen, I think that is one of the last pieces of advice I want to give everyone as a business owner. From business owner to business owner, be your unique self. Yes, you're going to learn from your other agency owners. You're going to watch what they do. But how does it uniquely fit you? How does it uniquely fit your market? I see you, Stephen, all over social media. I'm watching you develop your own uniqueness. And that's what's so important. If we turned RD Advisory Group and our Agency CFO program to be like a Reagan Consulting or to be like a Marshberry or whatever else, we wouldn't be us and we wouldn't be successful because we are not genuine and we are not authentic.
Yep. Stop comparing yourself to your neighbors, right? I mean, like that. I learned that real quick. The premium talk and it's all just like focus on yourself, put your head down and make it happen. Well, guys, we really appreciate you being on the podcast. I got to take this opportunity. I'm going to sit back for a second and I'm going to let Roe and Cayla talk to Shawn real quick about Utica food. Because I don't think he believes me that we have the best food out there. So I'm just going to sit back and let you guys just corner them even further here while we got the Utica power. And just let them know. Because, New York City food's the best, this and that. Come on. I'll sit back. Go ahead, Roe. You're ready.
I'm ready because I just took my mom to lunch today. Before this podcast, my mom and I went to lunch to one of my ultimate favorite local restaurants, Giorgio's Village Cafe.
Oh.
And it had its incredible lunch buffet. And she loves it there, and she's getting older. So to spend time with her, you walk in, and first thing you see is that tray of fresh tomato pie. And it's like this really yummy pizza that just goes with everything. Then there were the sausage and peppers, the hats and broccoli, the Utica greens, which you can't get anywhere else in the world, but just think breadcrumbs and cheese and Italian meats with some healthy greens thrown in. Right. And then I asked our beloved waitress, because I love all the waitresses there, could you bring me, they had their little salad bar. I'm like, can you bring me that homemade Parmesan peppercorn dressing that's made from scratch? Shawn, you're missing out, buddy.
Listen, I feel like I'm up against an impossible fight here, but I'm a classic pepper guy. Just give me some sloppy chicken tacos.
Hold on, Shawn. Cayla hasn't gone yet. Cayla hasn't gone.
That was just my lunch opportunity.
Yeah, that was just one lunch.
That was one lunch.
Tomato pie ain't my thing, okay?
I'm going to say, think about the feeling of what it would be like if someone gifted you like $1 million, gave you a nice warm hug after a cold day, give you a hot chocolate. That same feeling is the feeling you'd get with a nice big plate of Riggies. And
all right.
The best pasta you can have in the world.
Well, I guess I'll have to make the drive.
See, we're just waiting. We'll be waiting at Giorgio's.
I'll need a tour.
We won't talk about the homemade ice cream from Bonomo's or the Half Moons from Hefstraat's.
We'll have to do that on another podcasts. Utica food podcast. Forget the scratch agency stuff. Hey guys, why don't you tell everybody where they can get in touch with you, follow along, social media, all that fun stuff, and then we'll look to wrap it up. And again, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. It was a lot of good stuff.
Thank you, Stephen. You guys are a blessing to the industry, sharing your story. That's how we all learn. So thank you, most of all, thank you. And Shawn, Shawn, not to diminish you. Thank you to Stephen.
I'm
he
downstate.
reached out to us first. You're downstate. I got to watch out. Caitlin, our CFO on Long Island, will kill me. So many thanks to both of you, and I'll let Cayla wrap it up.
All right, so get a hold of us. AgencyCFO.com has everything if you want to learn more about our programs. And I will put the quick plug that we're currently working on revamping what we used to call our Executive Academy. It's for anyone that's under $1 million and is looking for a budget. They're looking for these financial topics to get a little bit more in depth. So we are planning to roll it out. If you're at IOA this year, we'll be there and we'll be rolling out this cool new product, cool new tool so that it's more accessible, it's easier to learn. And, for anyone that's interested, if you go to agencycfo.com, you want to be put on the list so that you know about it as soon as it comes out. There's a little subscribe button at the bottom. That's kind of like our wait list. So
Awesome.
If you want a budget at the end of the year, when we kind of roll out some tool that is very easy to use, easy to update, everything we've just talked about, that's really where we get everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. We got to wrap this up because I got an event coming up at the Saranac Brewery. If you want some good beer, Shawn, we'll take you up there as well. Everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.